let's see. We have to solve the system of inequalities, and I'm going to move this off to the side. There are different ways you could find out how to graph this one. It's a linear inequality, but you could either use the 2 points method to graph it, or you could get it into slope-intercept form. Now, with this one, do you have a preference on how to graph it? Do you want to see it with slope-intercept form or the method with the points?
I think better slope intercept, so I'm just keeping it with that.
Slope-intercept? Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, here, this one on the left, we'll go ahead and get this into slope-intercept form. So we'll get y by itself on one side. First, we'll go ahead and subtract 2x from both sides.
Yeah.
And you can put that in front of the 8. We'll need to divide this -4 from both sides. Before doing anything else, as soon as you divide or multiply by a negative number, go ahead and flip the sign here. The direction will change. But after that, this part will be normal. This will just turn into a y. This one here, the double negatives will cancel out. 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. And we'll put the x there. For this one, 8 divided by -4 is -2. Here, this is in slope-intercept form. It's the equivalent of having a y and mx and a b here.
Okay.
So we'll take the slope from this. Actually, the first thing you want to do is find, after you get it into slope-intercept form, you want to find the y-intercept. This is when x is automatically 0. You'll write it as an equation for this part, and this is where you have equals 1/2 x minus 2. And you put the 0 here where the x is. When you do that, this is like saying 1/2 times 0. So that's a 0 minus 2. And that means that when x is 0, from here, y is -2. So here we have the y-intercept. This is our starting point. Using this method, we're going to need this point, and we'll need to know how to move from that point. To know how to move from the point, you need the slope. And the slope is the m. Here where we have the m, you could either take it from the inequality version or the equation version, but in either case, it's the 1/2. That's the slope. If it's not a fraction, you'd want to turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. But here it's already a fraction. In the top, the 1 is positive, so that means it goes up 1. In the bottom, the 2 is positive, so that means it goes right 1. If it was negative for either one, it would go the opposite direction. And now here, that's everything we need to know to graph this one. We needed the y-intercept and the slope.
Okay.
First, we'll plot the y-intercept. So that will be right over here, 0, -2. Alright, so here we have our starting point. We plotted the 0, -2. After that, we'll use these movement instructions to figure out how to move from there. So from this point, it means that you'll have to move up 1 and then right by 2. That means the next point would be right here. And now, one more thing. We have to know if it's a solid or a dashed line. Going back to the original inequality that this came from, it has the less than or equal to symbol. If it has one of these symbols, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, these are solid lines. If it had the other kind without the bar underneath it, which would mean the or equal to part, then it would be dashed. So both of these are solid because they both have the or equal to part to them. And we'll come back to this one right after. But for this one, because we know this is a solid line, as soon as you have 2 points, you can just draw the line right through them. And now, let's see, we can go ahead and figure out also what the test point and where the shade would be. On paper, you can figure it out kind of like scratch work. For the test point, you'd want to pick the origin if you can. It's the best one that's available. And it's available as long as the line itself isn't going through it. So here you take the original inequality. So both the zeros here, you go ahead and plug them in. This one into x, this one into y. You got 2 times 0 minus 4 times 0 is less than 8. But the fact is, well, here I'll work it out first. So you end up with 0 is less than or equal to 8. The reason you want to pick 0, 0 is because this whole side on the left turns into a 0. And so if you got familiar with this method, you can basically just start here. We know that this entire side will just be a 0. So you just start here, and you know that this is a true statement because 0 is less than or equal to 8. The side that the point came from that we tested gave us a true statement, so that means that this is the side that you would shade for the blue line. For the one that we just graphed. So here's the other line. Now, this is a horizontal line. There's no x, and so there's no mx. Or to say it another way, the m is actually a 0. That's why there's no x. As long as you see that it's y greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, or even going back to this, as long as you see it's y equal to a number, and it can be any number, this is a flat line, a horizontal line. So since we know that's a horizontal line, we need to go to where the -1 is, which would be right here. We can just start here. And in reality, you can just pick any 2 points on this line. There's a flat line going this way. As long as you just pick 2 points on this flat line, and it's perfectly horizontal, that's all we need. So there happens to be this point from the other graph, or from the other line, and it's on the same -1. Here we have 2 points. And once we have these 2 points, we can just draw the solid line through them. The next thing we need to do is to figure out where to shade this. You don't have to do a test point. You could do a test point, but there's a really direct way to do it. To figure out where to shade this, if you see that y is greater than -1, what you want to think about is that the -1 is the line here itself. And so if y is greater than it, to be greater than it, it has to be up here. So this is one way you can do it. If you do want to use a test point, that will also work. You'd still pick 0, 0, because if you can pick that one, that's the best one you could pick. And we can pick this because the origin is right here, and the line is under it. It's not going through the test point. So then, this is x and this is y. There's no x to plug in that 0 to, so you'd only plug in this 0 into this y, and you got 0 is greater than or equal to -1. This is a true statement. So then we got a true statement from the side that the test point came from. So that means that for this red line, you would shade up here. So the final answer would be that where we would shade it where it's true for both of these at the same time. It has to be above the blue line and above the red line. And that would be that.